Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. Israel continues its relentless attack on Gaza with more bombings of civilian targets, including a crowded hospital. The past hours have seen some of the most intensive Israeli bombing of the 20-day assault. The Al-Quds hospital was hit by Israeli shells, setting it ablaze. Around 500 patients were being treated inside. The attack followed an earlier Israeli strike that hit the main United Nations aid compound in Gaza City. More than 700 Palestinians had taken shelter there. United Nations Relief and Works Agency spokesperson Christopher Gunnis said the compound's burning with flames from white phosphorus shells.
There have been 3 hits on the UNRWA headquarters, the UNRWA compound in Gaza, including, I'm told by John Ging, white phosphorus. 3 of our staff members have been injured. The workshop in our compound is in flames, and nearby are loaded fuel tankers. So the situation is extremely dangerous and extremely serious. We've been on the phone to the Israeli authorities, asking them to call off their fire from around the compound of a neutral international organization. We've not had the answer we want.
The UN says the fire will burn down an entire warehouse storing thousands of tons of food, medical supplies, and other aid. A nearby Israeli shelling hit an office building housing several media organizations. A journalist for the Abu Dhabi television channel was injured. Reuters bureau chief Alistair MacDonald said the attack came despite contact with the Israeli military.
We were, in fact, at that time in contact with the Israeli army, checking with them that they knew where our staff were and where they were working. We were assured that they were. Shortly after that, an explosion hit the floor just above us. Shrapnel entered the office. It also struck the offices of another media company 2 floors above ours. One person, at least, was wounded, we understand. We've evacuated our office.
Thousands of Palestinians have fled their homes today as Israel escalates its assault on densely populated residential areas. Gaza resident Nasser Mohammed said his family was forced to relocate twice after coming under Israeli attack.
We were inside a house with the children, and then the Israeli army started to shoot at us with bullets. So we moved to another house with the children. Then the second house came down on top of us.
The Palestinian death toll now stands at least 1,045, at least half of them civilian. Another 4,860 have been injured. 13 Israelis have been killed, including 4 soldiers by friendly fire. The latest attacks come after a coalition of 9 Israeli human rights groups called for an investigation into whether Israel's committing war crimes. In a statement, the groups, including the Israeli sections of Amnesty International and Physicians for Human Rights, condemned what they called the wanton use of lethal force against Palestinian civilians. They continue, this kind of fighting constitutes a blatant violation of the laws of warfare and raises the suspicion of the commission of war crimes. There are worldwide calls for prosecuting Israeli leaders. On Wednesday, hundreds gathered outside the International Criminal Court in The Hague. Sobi Kansa of the International Coalition Against Impunity said Israeli leaders should be tried for crimes against humanity.
The crimes of Israel against Gaza, it decreases day after day, and now it's terrorist crimes, you know. They are using terrorist weapons, murder, crimes against humanity, war crimes. So for this we came to The Hague, to ICC court. We want the court to go and start investigation about these crimes.
The Guardian of London reported this week diplomats are considering asking the United Nations General Assembly to refer Israel's actions in Gaza to the World Court. The UN Special Rapporteur to the occupied territories, Richard Falk, has said Israel's attack on Gaza could be in violation of the UN Charter, the Geneva Conventions, international law, and international humanitarian law. And UNICEF has also condemned the Gaza attack. In a rare statement, UNICEF urged an immediate ceasefire, calling the deaths of children tragic and unacceptable. Bolivia and Venezuela, meanwhile, have cut diplomatic ties with Israel in protest of the Gaza assault. Bolivian President Evo Morales also backed calls for investigating Israeli leaders.
Graves de trascendencia internacional no deben quedar.
The most serious international crimes should not go unpunished. Any government can back the investigation and punishment of these crimes.
Bolivia, como Estado soberano e independiente,
Bolivia, A sovereign state that shows it is against violence and respects life will work with other governments and humanitarian organizations to ask for an investigation in international court for the crimes committed in the Gaza Strip by Prime Minister Ehud Olmert and other members of the Israeli cabinet.
A ship trying to deliver humanitarian aid to Gaza says it's aborted its mission after the Israeli Navy threatened the civilian passengers on board. The Free Gaza movement boat left Cyprus Wednesday, seeking to deliver doctors and medical supplies. It was the group's first attempt to reach Gaza since an Israeli Navy vessel deliberately rammed another humanitarian boat last month, almost forcing it to sink. According to a Free Gaza statement, 5 Israeli gunboats surrounded the Spirit of Humanity ship in international waters 100 miles off the Gaza coast. In a radio transmission, the Israeli Navy threatened to open fire on the ship unless it immediately turned around. Meanwhile, the Israeli government has intercepted an Iranian ship headed to Gaza for the second time. The ship's carrying food and medicine had planned to arrive in Gaza this past weekend. It tried to reach Gaza again Wednesday, but was intercepted by the Israeli Navy. And the U.S. has been forced to cancel a weapons shipment to Israel after the Greek government refused to allow it to pass through its ports. The U.S. says it will seek an alternative site. Osama bin Laden has resurfaced in a new audio tape calling for a holy war over the Israeli attack on Gaza. The undated recording condemns Israel and the United States.
We are with you and we will not let you down. Our fate is tied to yours in fighting the Crusader Zionist coalition, in fighting until victory or martyrdom. God has bestowed us with the patience to continue the path of jihad for another 7 years, and 7 and 7. The question is, can America continue its war with us for several more decades to come? Reports and evidence would suggest otherwise.
In Iraq news, Pentagon commanders are reportedly drafting contingencies for a speedier withdrawal of U.S. troops than currently planned. The Washington Post reports military officials ordered the new withdrawal plan in case President-elect Obama rejects current proposals as too slow. A federal judge has ruled the Pentagon must release a Guantanamo prisoner over lack of evidence to justify continued imprisonment. U.S. District Judge Richard Leon says the Pentagon's failed to prove Mohammed al-Ghorani is a so-called enemy combatant. A Chad national, Ghorani was arrested in Pakistan in 2002. He's been held at Guantanamo for more than 6 years. On Capitol Hill, the House has passed a measure expanding government health insurance for low-income children. President Bush has vetoed previous votes expanding the state children's health insurance program known as S-CHIP. But President-elect Obama says it will be one of the first measures he hopes to sign into law when he takes office next week. The $33 billion bill will be funded in part by a tax increase on cigarettes. A Senate vote is expected next week. The Supreme Court's ruled evidence obtained through illegal searches or mistaken arrests can still be used to prosecute criminal cases. In a 5-4 ruling, the court voted to impose new limits on the so-called exclusionary rule, which dismisses evidence obtained from unreasonable searches or seizure. In a dissent, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg said the ruling leaves suspects in exclusionary cases with, quote, no remedy for violations of their constitutional rights. The Bush administration's claiming it'll meet a legal requirement to hand over millions of emails it's long claimed to have lost. A government lawyer made the announcement at a hearing in a suit brought by civil liberties groups seeking the emails' public release. The announcement came hours after a district court judge ordered White House employees to search their hard drives for the missing emails dated from 2003 to 2005. One of the plaintiffs, the group Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, says the government's claim to have recovered the emails should be verified independently. Another ruling is expected soon in a suit seeking to force Vice President Dick Cheney to hand over his personal records. Cheney says he should decide what gets publicly disclosed. And the Treasury Department's reportedly finalizing a new plan to give Bank of America billions of additional dollars on top of the $25 billion infusion it's already received in the taxpayer bailout. Bank of America says it needs the funds to complete the acquisition of the troubled firms Merrill Lynch and Countrywide. $10 billion of the $25 billion Bank of America received last year was earmarked for its purchase of Merrill Lynch. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez.